Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This is the last episode of Apple Slice before WWDC, and next week is going to be very exciting, but in an Apple Slice first, I'm running solo on this one. Unfortunately, Nick couldn't make it this time round. He is under the weather, so to say, so he'll definitely be back next week for some WWDC action. So if you don't mind listening to my smooth, sensual tones, then everything should be okay. But yeah, just a reminder for anyone that wants to catch the live stream of WWDC, I've put it all up on our website under my column Simon Says at appleslice.com.au. So head over there, and you can also download the updated WWDC app for iOS, Apple TV, Watch, and there's a iMessage sticker pack too, with these kind of retro cool icons. Pretty fun to use and share around. And finally, before we get right into it, I did a guest spot on the Review Culture podcast. We've mentioned them a few times in past episodes, but be sure to search Review Culture in your podcast player, and you'll find myself talking with Buddy and Lance about Linkin Park's new divisive pop sound. So if you're into that band or you're feeling rage against the way they've changed their style, then definitely get on board for that episode there. So we're going to kick it off, not with product perception, but with Deal Down Under this time round. So for anyone who's paid attention to our social media accounts or read it on the site, under Simon Says, again, on our website, appleslice.com.au, you'll find an extensive discovery that I did regarding some leaked iOS wallpapers. So I'm not going to go into all the details here because it's online, but essentially in a nutshell, there were 3 wallpapers found in iOS 10.3.3 public beta, specifically for a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Now, one of them is a beach called Albany Gold, and I did all the background work. I connected the dots, and I proved that this image was of Shelley Beach in my hometown of Albany, Western Australia. So I put all my findings on the website, including locating it and talking to the photographers involved. So I sent this article out to a few newspaper outlets, and I eventually sat down with Taylor Neal from my local paper, the Albany Advertiser, and he got the article and the image to the front page. So it's got a front page bit there leading you to the article on page 12. So you can read this article again. I've previously mentioned I put this up on our social accounts, so you'll find it there. And the article's also published at thewest.com.au, so we'll leave a link in the episode post on our website. Taylor, actually, the guy I spoke to, he then discovered the photographers were approached by Apple via Instagram, and that the image used was one of the first ones they did when they set up their drone photography business back in 2015. So that's quite interesting. The biggest exciting part about all of this is I really hope that these 3 wallpapers are the 3 default iOS 11 wallpapers, particularly the Shelley Beach one I'm discussing. If that makes iOS 11 as the default wallpaper used in all the marketing, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And obviously, aside from all the other software and expected hardware announcements, next week is going to be insane level excitement for me and all Apple fans alike. So Nick, actually, when I was discussing this with him, he seemed pretty convinced that the shot on iPhone 7 campaign that he spoke about previously, that the locations used in those videos was of his home country, South Africa. So that's pretty cool. And I kind of touch on in my article about, Apple's, particularly in the last few years, have expanded beyond just American locations. So it's all inclusive, and it's exciting, and it's kind of showing Apple's products used in a worldwide reach across all different cultures. So it's very cool. But the other part of Deal Down Under, so I've had some listeners asking me about Australian HomeKit. So usually anything HomeKit related seems to start in the US, and the availability is far greater over there than it is over here. There's a very select range of HomeKit accessories so far, but Australia actually now has its own specialized HomeKit installer called Nota. That's N-O-T-A-A. They're currently doing installations in Sutherland Shire, Sydney Metro, so there you go, Nick, and they're planning to expand to New Zealand. So I don't know much in the sense of their plans regarding other cities, but yeah, there you go. If you're particularly around Sydney, then and you want to get yourself home kitted up, then that specialist installation business is called Nota, N-O-T-A-A. There's no pricing yet. There is a call-out fee, but they are doing some introductory offers, such as if you buy 5 bulbs, you get 10% off, 10 bulbs, you get 15% off, and you get 7% off if you buy 3 D-Link Omnis or Nanoleafs, and 15% off if you buy 6 of either of those. So, yeah, definitely something to get onto. Quite pricey. Anything HomeKit related is quite pricey, but hey, if you really want to feel part of the future, then that's definitely up your alley. So now we're going to move on to product perception. Nike they're on an absolute roll. In the last episode, Nick was very convinced that, oh no, there's no way they're going to release another band so soon, particularly a blue one. Well, I'm sorry, Nick, but they did. And they've released 4 bands. So in a way to match to their Vapor Max shoe range, Vapor Max Flynet shoes, sorry, they released the Day to Night collection. So it has the same perforated design of the current Nike watch bands, but comes in 2 shades of pink and purple and 2 shades of blue. It's currently on Nike.com and in Nike stores with the same band pricing you can expect, and it's apparently coming to Apple.com in late June. So hopefully, out of all these Nike releases, finally one could be available in Australia. That would be really awesome. So yeah, if anyone's wanting to know, and they probably expect what my answer will be, no, I will not be buying them, not being a Nike guy, but you know, I may probably expect Nick to be running around with a dark blue one. Not sure. Okay, so with just flying through these, it's getting through this episode a lot quicker without the feedback from Nick here. So hopefully I can just pack in as much as possible. Going to move on to Rumour Mill. Always love talking about Rumour Mill. And as we tend to like to do, we don't want to drop in every single possible rumour, but just bring ones that have a bit more solid evidence behind the claims. So Apple are reportedly working on something they call Apple Neural Engine. So the next gen iPhone is rumoured to include augmented reality features and improved Siri. And so this new Apple Neural Engine is a dedicated chip to offload AI processing and improve battery life as a result. So I'd expect integration of this into iPhone first, and then followed by iPad. Now the iPhone 8/iPhone X, whatever you want to call it, is suggested to have a 3D sensing front camera. So this report states that prototypes have actually been tested. It's unclear as to whether the actual iPhone 8 will include this chip, but I'd imagine if they are going to be bringing augmented reality features, and this would definitely be a good driver to help that. And so the idea is that tasks purely involving stuff like augmented reality and Siri, as well as other processes that could be handled, include predictive keyboard and speech recognition. So it's basically taking very specific features and dedicating them to one chip as to not to overload the primary chip. This is cool particularly because for the battery life reasons, so it can help alleviate the amount of usage there. Now, my guess is that this will be called the N1 chip. If you wanted to call it neural engine chip, it could be NE1, but I don't think they'll be calling their chip NE1. So yeah, N1 chip. Hopefully, this September event, we'll be able to see that. So moving on, further into the future, there have reportedly been micro LED trials. So this is a next generation display tech, which is basically a microscopic version of standard LED. Some people refer to it as MLED. Now, it's brighter and more power efficient than OLED, features the same deep blacks as OLED, same sort of lighting per pixel. Now, there's online tech forums that are kind of full bottle on this type of subject. There's comparisons to other types such as QLED and crystal LED. So the funniest part about this is that OLED is only currently in the Apple Watch, and we're expecting it for iPhone 8. So this kind of begs the question, if they're talking about micro LED now, how long will OLED be around for the iPhone? Not sure what Nick is thinking, because unfortunately he's not here, but I would say, considering just the mass production volume with iPhone and how long it's taken, what we're expecting OLED to appear in an iPhone, this sort of thing to be used for iPhones, I think would be at least 2 years away. So it's, it's cool that they're getting involved in looking past what is coming after OLED, but yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath there thinking that there's going to be a micro LED 2018 iPhone. So there you go. Now we're going to tick along to core focus. Apple Park is just simply amazing, and the reason that, apart from the obvious details of its epic size and its long build time, is that there has been this in-depth article put up at wired.com, I'll link it on our website, by Stephen Levi, photos by Dan Winters, and it just features awesome photography of outside and inside Apple Park, so finally getting to see inside it. Now, he talks to various members of Apple, and there's some very serious photos of Tim Cook and Johnny Ive there. But it is quite a long article. I'll just kind of touch on parts that I particularly were drawn to. There was a quote that Stephen himself was asking. He said, "This might be a stupid question, but why do you need a 4-story glass floor?" And then it says, "Ive raises an eyebrow." "Well," he says, "it depends how you define need, doesn't it?" Which is just, you can classic imagine Ive kind of like tilting his head and pushing it towards the camera a little bit, like he does in the official Apple product videos of yesteryear. So another part that I quite liked was there was a sketch from one of the architects involved showing all the different shapes that they thought of to get to the spaceship campus shape. And particularly there was one that was propeller shaped. So apparently initially Jobs didn't want it to be circular. And there's a whole bunch of reasoning behind that. But yeah, I'd definitely just read the article yourself. Some of the images included, there's this one of the glass fins along the inside, and that image is just absolutely amazing. Set that as my wallpaper straight away. It perfectly fit the portrait orientation of my phone. Now, surprisingly, Jobs was actually really intrigued by forms of nature and not just product and structural design. One quote that you can read here is that Jobs was noted as saying, "The most amazing thing about trees is it doesn't actually matter how rich you are. You can never buy a really old, beautiful tree." So I thought that was a quite a good quote. And there's just some cool images of the type of trees that they're installing in the garden on the inside of Apple Park. As I mentioned before, there were some official photos, and Johnny Ive's eyes are just crazy intense, and serious Tim Cook is just a complete different vibe than what you'd expect at a keynote Tim Cook. And funnily enough, there's also, Apple had created and patented a anti-soggy crust pizza box for their employees. So basically, get your pizza when you go to work at Apple. If you want to take it home, you have this special custom Apple box that's going to ensure maximum freshness for your pizza. So that was quite interesting too. And final part that I like is apparently outside the fitness center, they had taken stone and purposely distressed the look of the stone because apparently that looked like one of Jobs' favorite Yosemite hotels. So there's just all these little details that you can read about. But yeah, I won't go on too long about it. I'll just encourage you to read it for yourself with the link from our website. And of course, it wouldn't be the episode before WWDC without a host of keynote-worthy news. Apparently, Siri Speaker is actually in production, which would be pretty encouraging considering I'm kind of expecting it to be announced next week. So there was a Bloomberg report that the Siri Speaker and its main selling point over the competitors' devices is that it'll have, and quoted, virtual surround sound technology. So it's kind of looking like that audio is going to be Apple's advantage in this. And of course, not failing to mention the tight integration into iCloud's ecosystem. Now, apparently the AirPods manufacturer is going to be making the Siri Speaker, which would lead me to believe there's going to be involvement with W1 chip there. And it's just good to kind of hear something a bit more reputable, a bit more official, other than the rumors of, Siri Speaker's going to be there. So to hear from Bloomberg that it is apparently in production is kind of raised my likelihood percentage of Siri Speaker at WWDC from 60 to, let's go 75. Funnily enough, though, is that the Amazon Echo has actually now gained iCloud calendar support, which also backs up the fact that could this be a strong hint at Siri Speaker coming soon as a way for Amazon Echo to kind of get ahead just before the announcement. Now, this support only currently exists in US, UK, and Germany, but it's interesting having this kind of cross-platform support. I know that Amazon have been the most open out of any of the big companies in this ambient technology space in terms of wanting to connect to other services. And as we mentioned last week, Amazon Prime Video is expected to be announced at WWDC on Apple TV too. So it's a bit of Amazon-Apple love. The feud may be over. And for the podcasters, myself, obviously, and Nick, there is an Apple Podcast studio at WWDC. So this is a first, and it sounds pretty freaking awesome. So podcasters can reserve 1-hour slots in Apple's dedicated podcast studio that's on-site in the McHenry Convention Center where WWDC is being held. Now you can have up to 4 guests per show, and they actually have a team of experts on hand to help you set up. So while they say 1-hour slot, I wouldn't be expecting 1-hour episodes. Probably by the time you get set up and wrap up and you take your file away with you, you're probably going to expect 30, 40-minute episodes. But this has kind of just made me really, really want to jump on a plane, head to Cupertino, and somehow make my way into that center, because that's going to happen, said no one ever. And yeah, it's the more exciting part about this also is Apple rebranded iTunes Podcasts as Apple Podcasts. There's a dedicated studio, and Eddie Q, when we were talking about the Code Conference, mentioned about that they're working on new features for podcasts. So this is kind of getting me a bit more excited about what could they possibly announce. But with all the other rumors of hardware announcements alongside the usual software stuff, how long is this WWDC going to be? It sounds like it's going to be pretty massive. I mean, if we're expecting 4 major operating system updates and then an iPad Pro, possibly 2 iPad Pros, MacBook updates, it's just going to be insane. So are they going to have time to squeeze in anything to do with podcasts? But that would be very much appreciated from myself as a podcaster and from people as podcast listeners. If you're listening to this, you could get into podcasting yourself, and hopefully they also push out something involving podcast creation. I think a dedicated Apple podcast creator would be awesome. And then something I really want to talk about is this new iOS 11 concept video that's been put out. So it's created by Sam Beckett, and it's completely made around pro features for the iPad. So features in this concept include system-wide drag and drop, so it's images and text. Has this cool shelf feature that appears at the top where you can drop saved content such as a song, an image, or an app. And it looks like it uses 3D touch to preview the content from the thumbnail. So that would then also allude to the fact that 3D touch for iPad, which we very much want. A redesigned split view where the app picker is redesigned. So it's got grid style icons at the top and a thumbnail slider at the bottom. That would definitely be very much something that we'd want to see. With the lack of actual order in the slide over split view app picker, so to have something that's definitely far easier to navigate around is going to be a big plus. A redesigned app store. In this concept, this aligns very much with the Apple Music design language, so that would be cool. That'd be something I'd very much expect to see. iCloud Drive. So this is cool. They've set out iCloud Drive to be very similar to actually how macOS is, and includes file version history. So this would be great, particularly on a large screen real estate such as iPad. And stuff like you can pin frequently used extensions in Safari. They did put a denser home screen for iPad Pro, but I feel like I like spaced out icons. I don't like things to be too cluttered. So whether you had an option to have it one way or the other, that would be good. And they showed other features such as Mail Smart Folders. The hard bit about having such a well-animated and thought-out video as this is that now I really want all these features to come true. So I'm just going to fingers crossed that we see these in iOS 11. So let's just say we're expecting new iPads to come out. You're going to have to expect some big changes for iPad in iOS 11. And so, particularly like even if they don't have that shelf feature or something, if they had something like that where you could temporarily store content and links and images and stuff, that would be just amazing to use. And stuff like the app picker, as I mentioned, that's something that's very much sought after. I did also think back to that multi-user login, and I feel like if that is going to roll out, that is going to be more on a enterprise level delivery, such as the way that they've only made it available for education. So I kind of don't feel like it's going to even be part of the standard iOS 11. Now, as you heard in the last episode, Nick isn't overly fussed about that, but I can just to retouch on that, definitely see that being a big advantage in workplaces. At my work, they were talking about just getting an iPad to show products and specs and features to potential customers and stuff. And I can think if they just had one iPad between the 4 salesmen to use as a tool, having multi-user login there, that would be really handy. Because some people they sort of specialize in certain products. So if you have certain things loaded on there, ready to go, set up for a particular salesman, I could see a big advantage there. Man, I'm absolutely flying through this now. This is really strange to do it solo. Solo podcasts not so much heard of, considering podcasts is around conversations. But, we'll be back to our regular duo mode next week. Maybe even a guest. I'm trying to get some guests. Speaking of which, I was trying to get some guests for this episode, but it was very much too last minute. Unfortunately, I had to take on the solo status as of a couple of hours ago. So there you go. But definitely open to having guests in the future. For a while there at the start of the year, we were almost covering every single Apple advert, and then they just put out so many that I didn't want to have an advert-only podcast. But we're going to bring it back to a few ones that have just been released. So we spoke about the Earth Day ads that were released, and they've pulled out another one. This is all about the iPhone disassembly robot Liam, and the title is called "Does My iPhone Believe in Reincarnation?" And so it's in the same animation style and everything as previous. Features Lisa Jackson and other Apple employees. So as I said, it's focused around this robot, and it's basically how Liam organizes the parts perfectly, and then they literally reuse the parts. So it finishes on the fact that they don't need to extract any new material from the earth, which definitely goes towards their big environmental goals that we covered. And I kind of feel like because they pushed out several at the start and then now one, how often they're going to keep releasing these adverts. I very much enjoy the different style to them, and I feel like it's going to be an ongoing thing, considering their big picture goals. Just jump on the Apple YouTube channel and you can check those out there. But while you're there, they've released a whole bunch of short 15-second adverts pushing the fact that you should switch to iPhone. Now, while it doesn't specify Android, this is very much a Apple trying to compare themselves to Android as a way to get you to jump on board. So, yeah, it features a single scene and it's color split, so one color left, one color right. It's very simple, no dialogue, just upbeat piano-led music. Has several different ones titled Music, Privacy, Fast, Jump, Photos, Smooth, Security, and Contacts. I think one of the coolest ones is the music one. It's just literally talking about how you can move your music over to your iPhone easily. And it just features this film crew guy that moves this entire, like the piano player and the entire piano across from one side to the other. One of the funny ones was Privacy, as this guy reading the paper and this other guy kind of snooping over his shoulder. And then the newspaper reader guy walks over, and then the guy that was peeping at him kind of slides away. I think this is a good analogy of basically when you're with iPhone and their huge stance on privacy, it's the iPhone and Apple devices are there to protect your privacy, and they're not trying to invade it as a way to enhance their own products, say, such as Google would do. But, yes, I really feel like that this is a good analogy of the fact that the guy looking over the shoulder kind of, could be seen as one of these bigger companies, say your Google, that's literally reading what you're reading. And then the guy moves over to the iPhone side, and then that guy disappears. And I found this one to be the most effective. There were ones like just called Jump, where this guy jumps from one side to the other, and then he does a backflip. I'm assuming that just meaning how easy it is to jump from one platform to iPhone. And then the backflip, I guess, alluding to the fact that he's finding it more fun and more enjoyable. And they got another one called Contacts, which is just like Jump, but has several people following each other. So it's like the main guy and his friends. One of the ones that I also like the best is the security one. Has this kind of cat burglar style guy drops in from the ceiling and literally goes to move over to the iPhone side, and that center of the screen acts like a wall. So that one's pretty funny. But yeah, they're short. They're simple. I think they're pretty effective. Some of them are like the one just titled Jump, are probably a little bit too vague to quite have the effect that, say, the privacy or music ones do. But yeah, it's literally, if you're watching them all in order, that's going to be barely a minute of your time. So I'll check those out if you can. And finally, with uniquely Apple, Carpool Karaoke has now got a launch date. We previously mentioned that Carpool Karaoke was delayed, but now Eddie Q has confirmed on Twitter that August 8th via Apple Music is when you will expect to see the series. Nick suggested to me that I think he heard somewhere that the delays were initially regarding the transcription of captions, so for different languages, which is quite interesting. So we were kind of discussing back and forth as to how exactly that would be happening, and I would primarily think it's when the songs are being performed, more with... I originally thought it might be stuff involving rapping, but Nick seemed to think it might be in terms of singing and the way people hold notes and stuff. So I almost want to try watch it in another language and then just see how the captions appear. One last thing I want to point out before I wrap this up is just prior to recording, I was listening to Walt Mossberg talk to Andy Rubin. He's the CEO of Essential Products, and at the Code Conference, which has just happened, he talks with him about his company Playground Ventures, and particularly touched on this. You probably see this new phone floating around, and it's called Essential Phone. And it's looking like it's going to be running its own operating system, but it's currently running Android. It's all a little bit transitional at the moment. I think the main thing to point out about this is that, well, first of all, it's made of titanium and ceramic, so it's different materials in itself, but it's more to do with the actual camera at the top. So the screen takes up most of the front of the phone, even more so than the Galaxy S8. And it has this little cutout at the top for the camera. If you've seen this, how do you feel about it? Because there's more and more iPhone 8 renders and concepts coming out. And the latest ones we've seen, basically, I'd describe it as pretty much all screen on the front, and then the top where you'd expect the earpiece and the camera and such kind of cuts into the screen about 3/5 the width of it. And that looks pretty cool. But yeah, this one called Essential Phone is even more minimal than that. And a lot of people are hating on it, but I actually kind of liked it. There were some other stuff that this Andy Rubin was talking about with Walt, where it seems to me kind of like typical Google fashion, because this guy is actually the co-founder of Android, but he's separate from it now, in the sense that he's promising all these things that sound amazing, but he can't actually talk too much about it. And so while it's exciting, it's also quite a bit vague. But yeah, the reason I just thought I'd bring this up is because of this. So many people are talking about, okay, well, is the Touch ID going to be embedded, or is it going to be a fingerprint sensor on the back? And then now it's like, well, after that's been spoken about for several months now, people are moving on to, okay, well, how are they going to do the top? Are they going to put the camera behind the glass and all this sorts of things? So I think what I'll do is I'll actually post an image of Essential Phone. It's literally, the company's called Essential, the product is called Phone, and the latest iPhone 8 render. And yeah, I'd love to see what your thoughts are on which one you think is actually better. But yeah, this Andy guy's got pretty ambitious ideas. I sort of don't take too much interest until he releases his supposed whole new operating system. But usually, as always, it's good to check out these sorts of things, see what the rivals are doing. And this guy does have the financial backing to be able to probably be able to pull off something quite successful. And he actually, funnily enough, also has a ambient home device that he's trying to have completely interoperable. So he wants his device to work with all other assistants, Siri included, and he's sort of like putting the invitation out there and seeing if Apple will accept it or not. Now, typically, obviously, we'd expect Apple to want to keep everything within their own ecosystem, which is perfectly fine because that's the best way it works. So I'm wondering whether through things like Siri Kit that you might be able to pull this sort of thing off. But yeah, ultimately, this is just a little side note of interest. But next week is where all the action is, WWDC, so you're not going to want to miss out on that. I think I literally just quoted the title of my article. So, feeling a little bit silly. Silly Simon. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of a very concise slice. It's been quite interesting standing here talking to myself. But yeah, just anything I've discussed, any of the articles I've referenced, I'd encourage you to check those out. Be sure to leave us some comments and feedback. But where can you do that? So this is normally the part where Nick would state our various social media channels, but I'm going to have to bring that back to myself. I'm not going to try to put on a South African accent. I don't want to sound like I'm mocking or anything. So yeah, Apple Slice is on Instagram with Apple Slice Podcast, on Twitter with @AppleSliceAU, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Apple Slice Podcast. Of course, if you'd like to subscribe, search Apple Slice in your podcast player. If it's not in your player, please let us know. I want it to be everywhere. But ultimately, I would be super appreciative if people visited appleslice.com.au. All the information's there, all the episodes, all the links, everything. It's fun. And so, Simon, yes, is there anything else to add? No, I think that's about it. I'm all good for now. That was my very short 5 seconds of talking to myself and feeling extremely stupid. Thanks everyone for making it this far, listening to just one person kind of ramble on a little bit. But we'll catch you next week with WWDC. See you guys later.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.